But I think people want to know, what are the things that create visceral fat and cause all these problems and disease?
Yeah, great question. So I would say the biggest culprit is actually processed foods. A one of the first things we do is we work with people to get them off processed foods. And so I have this interesting slide that shows the effect isolated if you just simply get rid of processed carbohydrates, processed foods. This is how much visceral fat, when the study began, it was in one person. I'd like to duplicate this with many others, but this person eliminated processed foods, and look how much change they had in just 2 weeks. It was a 2 week period of time. And by the time 35 weeks came up, they had a whole new shape to their body. So they got, six pack, they got, they increased their muscularity, decreased their deadly fat. And they also decreased the fat in their muscles. See that red stuff and the red streaks, and how that's been eliminated. So the first recommendation is stopping processed foods. That's what causes a lot of this visceral fat. And the interesting thing is, this person did not exercise 1 minute. So this has been confirmed in a lot of my clients, but also in another study I didn't have anything to do with. It just came out, I think, December 4th of this past year, 2024, in which they looked at this one particular type of fat here, the muscle fat called myosteatosis, and it always correlates to visceral fat. So it's like a proxy for visceral fat is fat in the muscle. In this particular study, they looked at muscle fat, and they found that muscle fat does not change. And I can tell you, visceral fat will follow this exactly. Did not, you cannot affect it from exercise. How about that? Exercise does not have an effect in that study on eliminating this muscle fat, nor did the amount of calories. So how much you eat and how much you exercise did not matter. What mattered was what you ate, okay? So I have long said, and I've found the same thing in my clients that I work with, focusing in directly on visceral fat, the fat also in the muscle and fat around the heart, that it's the quality of the calories more than the quantity of the calories. So I get my clients to be able to eat a lot more food, the right kind of food, and really they don't have to exercise. Now, I have found, though, that if they exercise in a certain way, like in a maximally intensive form of exercise, like sprinting, something very intense for just a few seconds, the visceral fat and the muscle fat does go away. But the exercise is rarely done by individuals. So in that study, it was more long-term, durational type of exercise, which most people do. They go and work out for a half hour, maybe 45 minutes. Some people even work out longer than that in the gym. I've talked to you, buddy, does 2 or 3 hours a day. I painted you. Just a half hour is actually more than you really should be doing. I exercise, and I'm going to whip off my shirt. I exercise 5 minutes a day for the past 15 years. 5 minutes, and no gear, no hormones, no steroids, ever. God strike me down if I'm lying. I've never done it. So you really don't have to exercise, but just a little bit. But you do have to exercise in a very intense manner, like our ancestors did. Our ancestors did not go to a gym. They did not go lift weights a long time. They fought and they killed. And that's basically what it came down to. And they sprinted to evade danger, and they sprinted to capture prey. And so I try to get people educated, and I challenge the notion that you got to go and exercise a lot. You really don't. So the third thing that causes visceral fat that we see in people is poor sleep. So if you're staying up at, night and you're reading or watching TV or you got insomnia, that will cause visceral fat. Or if you are waking up at nighttime because you're always having to pee. I had a client recently come to me who confided in me, confessed they were waking up, ready for this, 20 times a night. Can you imagine having your sleep interrupted 20 times a night? It contributes to visceral fat, which ends up causing his prostate to get bigger. It's a vicious cycle. If you notice a decrease in your urine stream, and I'm talking to you, buddy, a little bit, you are probably starting to develop visceral fat, and you better nip that problem in the bud and get an MRI. And the fourth thing we see that causes visceral fat is alcohol. So if you are drinking alcohol, you affect your metabolism and your ability to utilize um, the correct form of adipose formation. So you want superficial subcutaneous fat, which is beneficial and protective, and you don't want it forming in your fat forming in your muscles and in your deep subcutaneous space or in your visceral fat. So alcohol is a bad player. And Rena, we found people were very hard. It was very difficult for us to get rid of visceral fat, even if they did the right things, sprinting, cutting out processed foods, eating more healthy. Um, if they continued to drink, it was almost like a clamp on that visceral fat. It was placed on it, and it made it really hard to eliminate it. But once we got them to stop drinking, we could peel away that visceral fat much more easily. So alcohol is another bad contributor to visceral fat. The fourth thing is stress. If you have stress in your life, this is a silent killer that produces cortisol. Now, we're meant to have cortisol for short periods of time, but not like modern day stress. You want cortisol if you're on a hunt, 1 day hunt, or you got to, fight some, neighboring tribe of hostile fellow, human beings, and you got to fight, to save your life or something. Cortisol plays a beneficial role there. But let's be honest, if you have a job that you hate and you're going in every day and you have in front of you lions and tigers everywhere you look in that job, you just hate it and you're stressed out, you're going to be overproducing cortisol every single day, all day long. And cortisol is anabolic, meaning it produces fat, particularly visceral fat and fat in your muscle. And it's catabolic, meaning it will consume muscle. So you shrink your muscle and you build fat and you turn into the Pillsbury Doughboy that can't even lift a pencil if you have a lot of cortisol. And you can tell human beings who are really stressed out chronically a long period of time in a job that they hate and it's very stressful, their body habitus changes and they get this pear-shaped, body versus the person like yourself who loves what they're doing. It's like changes humanity. You're bright, you're vigorous, you're vital looking, you're healthy and attractive, all the right things because you enjoy what you're doing. So I like to tell my clients to make sure that they're in a vocation. I can't help them if they're going to be stressed out in a job, even if, I give them all the strategies to get rid of visceral fat. I can't help them if they're going to maintain stress in their life.
Absolutely. So that was 5 things. Eliminate the processed foods, alcohol, exercise, don't exercise too much, bad sleep, and then stress. We can talk more about that in terms of the solutions a little bit later, because if people will know how easy it is to look like Dr. O'Mara with his abs. If you just do a few simple things, it doesn't come from this excessive exercise, gym workouts, making it complicated. When you took your shirt off, I did see that you have abs. So I wanted to ask the question around people, they want to lose the belly fat, which is subcutaneous fat. Can you explain the difference between the types of fat, subcutaneous and visceral fat? I can see you're going to get an image to show us something, because people will look down and they'll say, "But hang on, I want to get rid of this flabby thing." How does all this get rid of that, and what's the difference between them?
So it's really an important distinction because visceral fat is inflammatory, it's disease, and it can be deadly. If you Google it, you'll see its connection to causing heart attacks and strokes, which is the number one killer of human beings. So chances are, if you're listening right now, you are more likely to die from a heart attack or stroke than anything else. So visceral fat has this connection already known to that. So we showed where it is, but it secretes these inflammatory molecules, interleukin 1, interleukin 6, other members of the interleukin fat family, cytokines, adipokines, resistin, all these molecules that go out and cause, disease and inflammation. But what's different about specifically superficial subcutaneous fat, is it secretes a molecule called adiponectin, and it's spelled just like it sounds, adiponectin, adiponectin, adiponectin. Google that and fall in love with it, because that molecule protects you from heart attacks, stroke, cancer, neurodegenerative conditions, which are things like MS, Parkinson's, Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS, and Alzheimer's, and other forms of cognitive decline and dementia. Adiponectin. Adiponectin is this molecule that your body makes chiefly in superficial subcutaneous fat, but not in deep subcutaneous fat. So let me just highlight that difference. Do you see all this white here? This white is subcutaneous fat, but there's two compartments. This is amazing. You just everybody lumps subcutaneous fat in together in one, but there's actually two compartments. Do you see that black line going down there? It's delineating the two compartments. That's a membrane called fascia's membrane, um, or scarpa's membrane. Scarpa's membrane or scarpa's fascia separates the deep subcutaneous fat, all this stuff, from the superficial subcutaneous fat. Now, why is there so little of the superficial that's beneficial and protective, and so much of the deep? That's because this person has a lot of visceral fat. So if you have a lot of visceral fat, you're going to have a lot of deep, and you're going to have very little superficial. Do you want to know what will make your face really pretty and keep it pretty for the rest of your life? This fat right here. And if you, the chances are, if you're listening right now, you probably have never been told that. And do you know what will change that face into a harsh face and make you unattractive? And I call it, give a woman a dude face, like you got a face like a man, when you get rid of this superficial subcutaneous fat. Now, I do have a six pack, but you can see it mostly on an MRI. If I get close and lower this camera down, I actually have a layer of fat. Can you see me pinching it? Okay. So that is a fair amount of superficial subcutaneous fat. I am never going to make the cover of Men's Fitness magazine unless they decide to really start printing truth like, this man says you'll live longer, live better, and look better if you have fat on your stomach. That might be a good cover edition for Men's Fitness. But typically, they will have guys and girls that have six packs on. But six packs have been around since the beginning of time, but we didn't see them the way we're seeing them now, with all subcutaneous fat, superficial and deep, being removed. But when I started talking about this, my followers, female followers, privately messaged me and they told me how much they regretted having liposuction because they noticed when that superficial subcutaneous fat, all that subcu fat was removed from their abdomen, their face became less attractive. Can you imagine? That's one that they don't tell you about in the fine print when you have that surgery. But that's what's happening. Do not get liposuction. Superficial subcutaneous fat keeps your face very attractive and it protects your body from disease. Besides all those diseases I told you it protects you from, it also protects you from obesity. So if you have a layer of that superficial subcutaneous fat, it plays a role in your metabolism and helps you from getting fat. So, boy, are your followers getting a lot tonight in value from watching your podcast because they're learning about these interesting things that they didn't know anything about. So, superficial subcutaneous fat is super good fat. And then deep subcutaneous fat, visceral fat, muscle fat, and heart fat are all inflammatory, deadly conditions, fat depots, collections of fat in your body that you don't want to have. So it's like bricks and clouds difference between superficial subcutaneous fat, the beneficial good stuff, from all the bad players.
I think it's very important to distinguish that difference. The liposuction story was quite interesting. I think also when people do like calorie counting, low calorie diets, that's when people don't look as healthy because you're not doing the right thing for your hormones and your body. Let's go into some solutions here. First question for you. If people just, there are some YouTube videos because prior to this episode, I was just looking at YouTube to say how to burn belly fat. And do you know what comes up? Workouts, ab exercises, and drink 2 cups of this. Do you think any of that works?
No, if you work out the correct way, that would be contributory. But it's probably going to be recommendations to working out for like working out an hour and a half. So more moderate intensity, low to moderate intensity for an hour, hour and a half, and doing ab workouts. So, those would be bad advice. But really, if you exercise in a very intense, brief manner, which is how our species has basically exercised in life, through real life conflict and just living challenges that we face. And really summed up in this way, the fight or flight syndrome. You're either going to fight or you're going to flight, run as fast as you can. And that's the way you want to be. It's a stress hormetic. It's brief. It's maximally intense. And that will help build superficial subcutaneous fat and help keep away visceral fat. So just today, I learned, it's very interesting, the Statue of David and the Statue of Venus, both beautiful works of art. Venus has been painted many times in paintings, beautiful female figure from, I think the Greek theology, but painted a lot during the Renaissance period where the masters were painting the most beautiful and attractive figures and sculpting them. So David and Venus, ready for this? No six packs. They had them, but you don't see them in the sculpture. Why? Because they're really not healthy to see that six pack. I'm going to tell you, if you're a female and you got a six pack, you're going to end up masculinizing your face and getting more of an inflammatory face. And if you're a guy, it's going to happen over a slower period of time. So superficial subcutaneous fat has more of a fast result in a female. Visceral fat has a slower onset and a slower effect in females. And in males, visceral fat forms faster and causes more disease, but superficial subcutaneous fat has a slower effect in males. So what does that mean? Lots of young guys, shredded looking faces, attractive, shredded abs, but they age, as they age, they're going to get more and more disease without that superficial subcutaneous fat, and lurking within them, probably because they carb and cut and bulk and, all that different kind of methodology they do to grow muscularity, ends up taxing their system. So they age poorly. I was horrified to see, Arnold Schwarzenegger filming his recent film. I think he's doing some kind of a Christmas Santa Claus thing. And he was walking around like such an old man. And so all of the bodybuilding and being super defined and no superficial subcutaneous fat, no subcu fat, comes with a tax. So you want to have a six pack, but you want to see it on the MRI. I have contours. I have a nice shape to my abdomen, and I've got good muscle tone. And when I lay down, this is a very interesting photograph. Oh, let me show you this photograph. You'll find this very interesting. This is another marker of the effects of visceral fat. So do you see this figure here? The abdomen, these are the rib cage. Do you see how it's sunk down? The muscles have collapsed. And that's sarcopenia. So you lose that muscle tone. And that individual also had drooping pectoralis majors. They hung down like, old man's pecs, like sagging breasts. But look how flat this abdomen is here. 20-year-old guys, teenagers have a flat abdomen from their intercostal right to their pubic symphysis. But the muscle tone here, this atrophy, means that there's no postural tone in that muscle when they lay on their back. And it corresponds to muscle strength. So hand grip, if you're able to do a hand grip, get it measured. If your hand grip is low on a hand grip chart, then you probably have accumulated visceral fat and have sarcopenia. His hand grip was only 34. This person's hand grip is 73. And this is me, 61 years old, Dr. Sean. So I have a flat abdomen when I lay. I don't have a dad bod when I stand up. My belly doesn't stick out. And I've got an amazing hand grip, not because I'm running around doing a hand grip thing. I only do maybe 6 times a year, and I hardly exercise. I'm not like doing all these pull-ups and bars all day long for an hour and a half getting grip strength. My hand grip is way stronger than younger guys who are doing all those kind of bar and doing those grips, just because I'm that healthy, having eliminated that fat within my interossei muscles in my hands. So it's the systemic influence of disease. You can't keep up with it working out to eliminate the disease. You just got to start living better.